as well. I've dropped a bit of a clanger. The 9th of April. We put the Lakeys back to that night because we thought it was going to be easier in terms of giving us space to get the room set up how we wanted to. And then I realised last week it's the final round of the Masters tournament, and I'm going to be down here. So I want you to know that I'm sacrificing for Jesus so that I can be down here at church. Is that okay? Happy Mother's Day to all the moms. Really is great to have you here with us this morning. Wasn't it great to have the children just doing that? And we want to encourage our young children, don't we? There's a verse in Proverbs chapter 1 and verse 8 that says this: "Listen, my son, to your father's instruction." You might think that's a bit of a strange verse to show on Mother's Day. Listen, my son, to your father's instruction. That isn't all of the verse. It goes on to say, "And do not forsake your..." Oh, let me try that again. "Do not forsake your mother's teaching." This is that one day of the year, isn't it? Hopefully we honour our moms every day of the year, but this is that one day specially designed in the calendar where we can really celebrate our moms and thank them for the incredible work that they do. And let's face it, we have a lot to thank them for, don't we? Because they do so much for us. I mean, they cook good food for us to eat. That's a good place, guys and kids, to say yes. I know some of you said that on the video, or cakes, as it was in the Savage household, I think. They turn a house into a home. They mend our wounds. Who is it you first go running to when you've hurt yourself as a child? It's never, Dad, is it? Dad gets you up and he says, "What have you done?" And it's like, "Well, I've hurt my leg." "Okay, let's chop it off then and you'll be okay." And they're like, no, but Mom comes and she's, "Oh, let me see to it, let me mend it." Except they mend our wounds. They console us when we face disappointments. Yeah? They cheer us when we do something well. And perhaps the greatest contribution is that they instruct us about life, don't they? I'm not saying as men or as dads don't do those things as well, but in the main, it's the moms who tend to do this the most. And I'm not ashamed this morning to say that I'd be lost without my wife in our home. I know that she's the glue that holds us as a family together, and I'm not ashamed to say that this morning. And she's looking at me now thinking, what else is he going to say about me this morning? But let's be honest, like they play, you moms, you ladies play such an important role in our lives. And just as Solomon says in that verse that he wrote thousands of years ago, do not forsake your mother's teaching. It's amazing what we can learn from our moms, isn't it? Talk to me, it's not the telly. It's amazing, isn't it, what we can learn from our moms. I came across this recently and I thought this would be really good to share on Mother's Day. These are some of the things that Mom teaches about without perhaps even knowing us, or without even knowing it. Mothers teach us about foresight. Make sure you wear clean underwear in case you're in an accident. How many of you have ever said such a thing or had that said to you? Mothers teach us about logic. If you fall out of that tree and break your leg, mothers teach us about maturity. Eat your vegetables or you'll never grow up. They teach us about religion. You better pray that comes out the carpet. They teach us about contradictions. Shut your mouth and eat your dinner. They teach us about contortionism. Will you look at the dirt on the back of your neck? They teach us about perseverance, don't they? You're going to sit here until you eat every last piece of that broccoli. They teach us about genetics. Oh, you're just like your father. They teach us about the weather. Looks like a tornado swept through your room. And they teach us about someone like that one over there. And they teach us about the circle of life. I brought you into this world, and I can take you out. Let's have a big round of applause for all the moms and all the wisdom. And the massive influence they have upon us and upon our kids. In fact, that truth is reflected in the amount of attention moms get that fathers don't. Did you know that more cards get sent on Mother's Day than they do on Father's Day? That's a true, I know it is, isn't it? It's a true statistic. There's more phone calls made on Mother's Day than there are on Father's Day to the dads. One man complained about this discrepancy, noting that he literally poured himself into his son's life. He taught him to play football, basketball, he took him camping, fishing, he taught him how to drive. And then when the boy went off to college and played for the college team, the network TV cameras were there and they focused on him, and guess what he said? Hi, Mom. I want us to think just for a few minutes this morning about some of the things that moms say, and for us to think about some of the life lessons that moms teach their children, whether they realize it or not through some of the things that they say. And to help me, I'm going to pick on three, what I think are really well-known quotes that I guess just like my mom, you might have used, or your mom might have used, or you might have used with your children, things that you can hear yourself saying to them yourself. And to help me, just because it's a bit more of an all-age service and we've got all the children in, I'm going to ask for 3 volunteers just to help me very briefly. I need 3 moms, 3 brave moms to help me. Now, as I thought, none of the moms want to put their hands up. They're all sitting like this now. So I wonder if there's any kids that want to nominate their moms for me this morning. Okay, we've got this family over here, Ayo. So Joyce, let's give Joyce a big round of applause as she comes and joins us. Have we got any others? Samuel and Joseph have both got their hand up. They are. Katie, you can do it. Like, Katie, come and join us. Come on. Let's give Katie. It's lovely looking around. All the kids are up, and all that. As I'm looking at Mom, she's going. Isn't that right, Tina? Isn't that right, Tina? Come on, let's give Tina a little quick round of applause as well. Okay, just come and join me on here. Okay, I'm not going to embarrass you at all, much, not at all. Okay, I've got some pieces of paper. Okay, there's a pen for you each. There's one for you. Where's Joyce? Okay, and there's some paper here for you. So you're going to need 3 sheets of paper each. This is a little bit like Saturday night takeaway, claiming the ads meet blankety blank. Okay, so if you've each got a piece of paper, what I'm going to do very simply, I want no help from the audience. Okay. Is I'm going to just say 3 well-known phrases that I'm sure you've either heard your mom say or you might have said it yourself. And I want you just to give me the missing word or the end of the phrase, okay? In fact, there's just one word for each of them. So, okay, this is the scenario. You're sitting on the living room floor. How many times did you hear these words perhaps in your home? Don't sit too close to the... The fire. It's not the one I'm looking for. Don't sit too close to the... Okay, Joyce, hold it up, tell us.
TV.
The television, okay, Katie, the TV. TV, well, give them a round of applause. Don't sit too close to the television, okay, that's the right answer. Okay, the second one is this. Okay, so you're at the dinner table. Okay, just try and picture this in your home. You're at the dinner table and you've heard this come from either your mom or you might have said it to maybe your children. You're not getting down from there, or you're not having any pudding until you've cleaned your teeth. You're not getting down from there, or you're not having any pudding until you've cleaned your...
I put room.
Room. Okay. Katie? Plate. Okay, the answer I was looking for was plate, but that's okay. Okay. Last one then. Last one. Okay, like you've asked your mom if you can. Okay, so just try and imagine when you were younger, perhaps. Like you've asked your mom if you can stay out longer to play with your friends than normal, or you want to watch something else, or you want to go out and do something, and your mom says, ask your... Okay, Joyce?
Dad.
Ask your dad, okay. Katie, ask your dad. Father. Ask your father, that's right. How many of you have ever heard those things being said in your home? How many of you are brave enough to admit that you say those things in your home today? Come on, let's not be shy. We're in church, we can tell the truth. Okay, that's it. Listen, just as a little way of saying thank you, there's an extra little Mother's Day gift for you there. So just by way of saying thank you. See, it wasn't that bad, was it, after all? If you give me the pens. That's me. Let's give them a round of applause, shall we, just as they go and sit down. 3 common phrases that we've all most likely heard at some point through our own childhood years, but have you ever wondered about how wise those sayings actually are, and the really important life lessons that they can teach us about how we live in this world around us, and for those of us who are Christians, how these things are important to God. You see, what are some of the really important lessons we can learn from them? Let's think about that first question I asked again for a moment. Don't sit too close to the television. You see, your mom told you not to sit too close to the TV. Why? Because it would hurt your eyes. It was bad for your eyes. But what she didn't realize was probably how true that statement actually is. As a professor of zoology at the University of Alberta called Mrs. Jean Luber, and she exposed 20 chickens to television 24 hours a day for 2.5 months. It's a true story. This is what she did. And what she found was that those chickens that were exposed to continual viewing developed glaucoma. They were blinded, and so they began to stagger around in a daze. I'm not going to try and do an impression of a blind chicken. No, I'm not. But you're all probably thinking, what on earth does that have to do with me today? Think of the words that Jesus spoke in the Gospels, and Luke 11, verses 34 and 35. Jesus said this, he said, your eye is the lamp of your body. When your eyes are good, your whole body is full of light. But when they're bad, your whole body is full of darkness. See to it then that the light within you is not darkness. Words that Jesus spoke. You see, in the physical realm, the eye is what gives light to the whole body, isn't it? And so if the eye is healthy, then the person can see the light. But if the eye is diseased or blind, then light can't get in, and so that person is exposed then to walk around in darkness. But you know, the same applies in the spiritual. So often we can learn lessons in the natural that apply to us in the spiritual realm, and as we think about our walk with God, and that what we allow into our lives can so easily affect how we think and how we live. How many of you have discovered that to be the truth? That's why it's so important, isn't it, that we learn to exercise some kind of control over the things that we feast our eyes upon, the things that we allow into our homes and into our lives, because of the effect that they can have upon us, not just upon us, but upon others also. This is why it's so important as a parent for me that I make sure that we've got guards over the things on the internet. Because like in this mobile savvy and this technologically savvy age that we live in, there's all kinds of stuff that's been shown, isn't there? And all it is for my kids, I know, is just one click of a button. And all of a sudden that can take them down a path that I don't want any of them to ever have to go down. Now, I'm a keen television person myself. I love watching the TV. There's lots of good stuff on there that I like to sit down and watch. Although most of what I watch these days is either Paw Patrol, Barbie, or Nickelodeon. That's the way it is, isn't it, with 4 young kids in the house. But you know, there's a lot of stuff that's not good either. And it's not going to really feed your soul and help you live in the fullness, that place of abundance that Jesus said he came to give us, because we can so easily begin to feast upon the wrong things. And I'm not going to tell you what's good and what isn't this morning. That's down for you to decide. But I just want us to be reminded as we think about that thing, don't sit too close to the television, thinking about the things that we allow to come into our lives, let's be mindful today of the stuff that we allow into our lives and into our homes. Because if we're serious about living for God, about really fulfilling more of that potential that he has for us and realizing more of that, I'm just saying be mindful. You know, Mom was right, sitting too close to the television really can ruin your eyes. But then she said something else, didn't she? Clean your plate. And I don't know what it's like in your home, but for us, I'm trying to instill into our children that if you asked for it, and sometimes they'll ask for more, well, then you're going to eat it. Even if I have to come and stuff it in. There's no social workers here, are there, this morning? I don't really do that. But if you've asked for it, you're going to eat it. And you're not going to leave the table until you've had any pudding. My mom was as soft as anything. She was great. It didn't matter if we didn't finish ours. We always had treacle tart or lemon curd and custard that she made for us every week. And if you're listening, Mom, thank you. And if you're listening, George, worth a trying it, you know. Don't ask, you don't get, and all that. But what lesson for life was Mom teaching us through this? I think it was this: to be mindful of those less fortunate than ourselves. That's a really important lesson, isn't it? To be mindful of those who are less fortunate than ourselves. Maybe for some of us, this was our first introduction to the world of missions, where we actually were being discouraged to both waste things and be greedy. Being discouraged. You see, it caused you to think of others less fortunate than yourselves. It promoted thinking outside of your own little world. So often we live in this little bubble, don't we, called me, myself, and I. And that's all we're thinking of in the main. But actually, there's a world around us where people are going without so much, and God might be wanting to use us to maybe offer a helping hand in some way. It promoted consideration for those in need. As the Bible calls it, the poor. We've just got back from Cambodia, myself and Mark, as you know, a few weeks back, and it was great being over there. But as we went into the more rural parts and the villages over there, it was amazing how these little kids had nothing, and yet they were so happy. And there was a real contentment within them, even though they had very little in comparison to what our kids have over here in the Western world. And I'm so much more mindful again since I've got back about what we waste and what we just discard so easily without really giving any second thought to it at all. And I wonder what our response should be this morning to those people that the Bible talks about as, or describes as, the poor. You know, God has a special concern for people who fit into that category. God's really interested in the poor and the needy. In fact, I think as you read through the Bible, it becomes clear that God considers neglect or mistreatment of the needy as a personal affront upon himself. Proverbs 14 and verse 31 tells us, "He who oppresses the poor shows contempt for their maker. But whoever's kind to the needy honors God." I want to be a person who honors God, don't you? And that means at times that we've got to be kind to the needy. A bit later on, Proverbs 28 and verse 27, "He who gives to the poor will lack nothing, but he who closes his eyes to them receives many curses." You know, God's interested in the poor. One of the very first Proverbs that I learned shortly after becoming a Christian 23 years ago was because my home church, every Saturday, they had a meal for the homeless in the area of Birmingham where we lived. And one of the very first Proverbs that I learned was Proverbs 19 and verse 17, which says that he who is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will reward him for what he's done. He who's kind to the poor lends to the Lord. Just try and picture this. And God will reward him for what he has done. In other words, we're told that whenever we give the poor our gifts of time and our talents, our treasures, etc., it's as if we're making a loan to God himself. And he promises to pay those things back with plenty of interest. There's loads more verses that say the same, but here's the thing, that God is interested, the God of the universe is interested and concerned with the plight of the poor, that he promises his blessing to any of us who'll respond to their needs and act on their behalf. Jesus said, you'll always have the poor amongst you. He says, look after them. Make sure that you give them a special priority. I'm not talking here about giving so that we can get back. That's the wrong motive, isn't it? But it's just about realizing, reminding ourselves this morning as we think about things that Mom says, how closely God identifies with the poor, how deeply he feels their pain. It's about realizing that if we truly want to follow God, then we need to care about the things that he cares about. We sing that song often, don't we? Break my heart for what breaks yours. And one of the things I've discovered is that it's so easy to sing songs in church that really don't have any bearing to us on how we live through the week. So I just want to remind us this morning, let's be mindful of those people around us that perhaps don't have as much as we have, and let's think about how we can look to help them when they're in times of need. Let's open our eyes, talking about our eyes before. Let's not walk around with some blinkers on and kind of shut ourselves off, but let's be mindful of what's taking place around us. If we want to be a church that leads others into life, this has to happen more and more in our lives, doesn't it? So let's open our eyes and let's be prepared to extend our hands. Maybe even offer gifts, the things that we have that can help them. Because he who's kind to the poor lends to the Lord. Time's almost gone. Last one that Mom always used to say, if ever I wanted to do something that was a little bit out of the norm, she'd always say, go and ask your father. Ask your father. And when my kids come to me and ask me, I say, go and ask your mom. And they say, we've already done that. And I say, well, what did she say? And whatever she said, go with that. Because I've learned. When me and Georgie first started going out, just as we got to know each other, she sent me one of these emails. You know these ones that often go around and do the rounds, 50 things you never knew about someone. Anyone ever had things like that? And you've got all these facts. And for someone who was really keen and interested to get to know this girl more and more, this was like gold dust in my hands. And so I began to study every one of these 50 things intently. And one of the things it said was her favourite film. She's looking away now. And it was the film, It's a Wonderful Life, if you've ever seen that one. It's a great Christmas film, isn't it? I'd never heard of it, let alone seen it. So I went out and I bought a copy of It's a Wonderful Life and I just began to watch it. It was like on demand, just back to back to back to back to back to get to know this film. True story, sad confessions, great for the soul. It's lousy for the image, but true story. And I began to learn this film so that when I began to speak to her or write emails, I'd drop little lines in from the film because I got to know this film so well. Seeing if she'd pick up on it and just thinking, wow, we're so alike. We're so compatible, the two of us. There's a scene in that film where James Stewart, who plays the lead role, George Bailey, as a boy, he wasn't sure of what to do. And just at that point, he saw a sign that read this: ask Dad, he always knows what's right. And all the dads went, all the dads in this section went, yeah. And all the dads in this section went, oh dear. You can see why moms get all the attention, can't you? But ask Dad, he always knows what's right. I can't ask my earthly dad. He died 26 years ago. But I do have a Father in heaven who I can go and ask anything. And I love that. The truth is, he loves it when we come to him, doesn't he? So when you're faced with important decisions that have to be made, what do you need to do? You need to ask. You need to ask your Father. You need to ask your Dad, your Heavenly Father. When your life takes an unexpected turn and it leaves you feeling like the rug has been pulled from beneath your feet, and we all go through those times, don't we? What's the best thing that we can do, church? We can ask your Dad. We can go to our Father. I'm sure you've all got great people in your life who you can go to when things don't work out well, and that's really good. But I want to remind you of perhaps one of the greatest things that our moms can ever say to us, the lessons we can learn. Ask your Father. James 1 and verse 5 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who graciously, who generously gives it to all without finding fault. Jesus said, ask and it will be given. Seek and you'll find. Knock and the door will be opened. For he who asks receives, he who seeks finds, and he who knocks, the door will be opened. So church, hear me today. When you're unsure of things to do, ask your Father. Go to him. He invites you to come. He's interested in your life. If you're here today and you don't know Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior, hear me this morning when I say this. He's interested in your life. He's interested in your life more than anything. He wants a relationship with you. It's not about religion that works from the outside in, imposes a set of rules. Jesus wants a heart relationship with you for you to get to know him and actually begin to discover this Father that we're talking about, who has motherly qualities as well, who really looks after us, who gathers us under his wings like a mother hen gathers her chicks. And so I want to say to you today, ask your Father. If you don't know him, my invitation to you today, more than anything else you've ever heard, is this. Invite Jesus into your life. He's not going to make you religious, but he does want you to get to know him and the plans that he has for you, and to begin to reveal life as it really should be lived, as he designed it. And you can come and talk to us about that. I wonder if the musicians can come, because I think they've got a song to lead us in as we close. But let's just remind ourselves of some of these really important lessons that moms teach us. Don't forsake your mother's teaching. Listen to your father's instruction, but don't forsake your mother's teaching. Don't get too close to the TV. Be mindful of what influences you allow to shape your thinking. Don't conform to the world's standards and molds. You're called to higher things. Clean your plate. Be mindful of those who are less fortunate than yourselves, and be thinking about what you can do to help them when you're in those situations. And of course, the greatest one of all, ask your Father. If in doubt, there is a God in heaven who wants to reveal himself more and more to each one of us, no matter where our standing might be before him this morning. And let's remind ourselves that we can go to him and we can call on him. And when we call on him, we can be confident that he will answer. I'm 46 now. As I look back, I'm grateful for all the things my mom said. It's amazing how many of those I find myself repeating to my children, and I'm sure they'll continue, please God, to repeat to their children as they grow up in years to come. And if you haven't done it already, if you're able to, why not make sure that you contact her today and thank her for all the things that she's taught you. Why don't we stand to our feet? We're going to finish with a song, and then we're going to look at this. It's almost 12:05 when we finish in church. There's a lovely cream tea that's been spread out upstairs, so let's be mindful of others. Let's not all just barge in and try and grab it, but let's do it orderly and politely. Those who are guests amongst us, we want you to go first. We want you to have a really nice coffee upstairs with us, and let's enjoy our Mother's Day celebrations together.